elected Trump for this. 3 years ago, the right wing solidly supported Israel. Right now, they don't. 3 years ago, it was unthinkable for a majority of the right to have turned against America's funding of Israel. Now you are seeing people under 40 on the left and the right agreeing that America should not be funding whatever the hell Israel's doing. Building Las Vegas and the Gaza Strip. Nobody's in for that. Nobody's in for that. When the Israeli finance minister comes out and goes, hey, we spent a lot of money on the war. We got to get paid back a little bit. We're doing a real estate project. It's on Trump's desk. It's all fine. People under 40 are going, hey, man, I can't own a house. I can't pay back my student loans. Why are my tax dollars funding you guys going and building Miami in Gaza? Who's that for? Who's that for? And why are people funding it? If you work at a 7-Eleven for 12 hours a day on your feet, your tax dollars are going so that real estate developers can build luxury condos with floating bathtubs in Gaza. There's no way anyone elected Trump for this. There's zero.
That is so true. It's not really funny because I think of my mind, all right, I don't work at 7-Eleven and neither do you, but I don't want my tax dollars going for that either.
I think, to be honest with you, I think Israel, because this is undisputable, we fund their entire country. That is, it's not even disputable. And that is why you just saw, just to get on a little side rant, Larry Ellison buying up at Trump's nod, because he gets money too. CBS, he put that Weiss woman in charge of it. They're trying to take back the narrative, and it's not going to work. But that's what you're watching when you saw that whole move. They're trying to take back the narrative because the left and the right under 40 have completely gone against the funding of Israel. Now, if we want to continue to fund Israel, forget about Canada. They should become the 51st state. Then I have no problem with it. But I do have a problem with giving money to another country when our own people are starving. That does not make me anti-Semitic. That does not make me anti-Jewish. That makes me American. I have no problem with Israel. I do have problems with our money going there. Sorry, I have every right to say that. And that is, frankly, straight up and down common sense.
No, listen, common sense is not that common anymore, as we both know. One thing I was thinking the other day, I was going to post something and I held off, is, you know who's owed an apology in all this? E. Michael Jones is owed an apology with everything.
I'll give you that. He's been saying this for years.
He's been trying to say, and I don't care what any Catholic or anybody else says, E. Michael Jones is not an anti-Semite. Okay, I think I'm smart enough to know the difference between a Jew hater and somebody who's looking at the reality of the situation, which is what he's always done. Now it's like chic to hate on the Jews. You know what I mean? It's almost like you're obligated now to if you see all these people. I'm not going to mention names.
Well, you shouldn't say hate on the Jews. Be critical is a better way to put it.
Right, but the thing is, but some are like, well, first of all, the left. I don't like the fact that those who are critical of what's going on with Israel's actions towards Gaza, I'm never going to join the left because they have an agenda. We know that they have. There's always some kind of
agenda. Yeah, but wrong is wrong, though. That's the thing.
No, I agree with you on that. But E. Michael Jones has been trying to say for the longest time that we need to have an intelligent conversation about the JQ, about the Jewish question. Okay, anti-Semitic. The ADL and the Southern Poverty Law Center and all these groups. He's a hater and blah, blah, blah. And guess what? Now they're all jumping on the bandwagon. Now they all feel free.
Dude, he's been doing this for a long time. 100% agree. When no one else did.
If you read, it's a long book. It's a 1,000-page book. If you read The Jewish Revolutionary Spirit, okay, I'm sorry. I would like to see Tucker Carlson interview E. Michael Jones. I would like to see Patrick Bet-David interview E. Michael Jones. Candace Owens already did. They talked about pornography. Okay, so she has an interview that she brought it out from behind the paywall. I encourage everybody to go and watch it. E. Michael Jones has been saying we need to have real authentic dialogue on this question, or else there's going to be problems. And what do you see now, Joe?
No, but we've talked about this. E. Michael Jones, it's how he articulates his message. He says that's his problem. He like under it, the message, there's a lot to be discussed. But when he throws like the Jew, you're like, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, that's not how you articulate the message. That's his problem. And that's probably why they don't put him on. I mean, we've interviewed him on other related subjects. He's a brilliant man. He speaks numerous languages. He's well versed on so many topics: philosophy, religion, geopolitics. He's a brilliant human being. He has a lot to offer the national conversation. It's just how he makes his presentation. To be honest with you, he needs us. He needs us to kind of be like, Mike, come on, dude. Let's get that message going a little bit better.
Yeah, if we could just get him to stop saying the Jew.
Yeah, that's it. That every time he says that, I cringe, dude. Right. I'm just like what?
Maybe just a little sensitivity there, as far as maybe it's not going to go over that well. We want people to listen to you,
right?
And people who, let's face it, they're sensitive to the way people phrase things. They might turn him off, and I want people to actually turn him on and listen. And maybe we could have a real deal conversation on that topic. But as far as everybody else goes, I'm sorry. It's like I said, it seems to be chic now. You're right. Wrong is wrong. And I think we had on Jason Jones the other day.
Correct.
And
very critical of what's going on in Gaza.
Very critical. He's basically saying the same thing. What's going on in Gaza it is not just. It really is coming down to vengeance more than it is justice. Okay. And he pointed it out. So I would encourage everybody to go out and watch that interview. That was a really good one with Jason Jones, and perhaps contribute if you go to the Frontline with Joe and Joe on X, YouTube, or Facebook. You'll see our interview from last week recently posted with Jason Jones. That was a great conversation. So today, Joe, I really believe Trump laid enough groundwork. I wish people would understand. I was actually having a conversation with my friend Angelo last night, right? So and we were talking about Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar was right on so many things, okay? His perspective, what he wanted to do, reforms that he wanted to try to institute. You know what Caesar's problem was? Pride. That was Caesar's problem. He thought that he was the only one that was actually going to be able to fix Rome. So he gave himself dictator powers for life. When the office itself was a 10-year office, he gave himself those powers for life. That's what got him killed. All right. But he wasn't wrong in what he wanted to do. And here's why I'm bringing that up, and I want your thoughts. Trump is doing, I think, a lot of the same thing. I think he needs some humility. He is not the answer. He's got the right ideas. He's laid the proper foundation. But the country is not going to live or die or survive based on Donald Trump himself. And I think he needs to understand that. Maybe he does. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not saying I'm right or I'm sage in some way. But my larger point is that he has embodied in the presidency much of the frustration of the American people. And he's right on these things. But I'm more and more thinking he's not the guy. Okay. He's not the one that's going to continue the movement. Number one, he's now 80 years old. Okay. I'm tired of hearing this idea he's running for a third term. I don't want Trump for a third term. And we can get into that later. But where am I going with this? I think that, first of all, he needs some humility. But not for nothing, the foundation that he's laid, particularly with his 3 Supreme Court justice nominations that we talked about. Joe, what was that?
5 years ago.
5 years ago. Said that's why we voted for him 3 times, okay, for judges. And now you're seeing that the Democrats, they really, really are in a whole lot of trouble. Let me play a clip. We'll come right back and discuss it.
Pretty accurately, mathematically, how the country's divided over the question of the presidency. But if you look at this is what the party pickups would be for congressional districts. Republicans, 5. Missouri, 1. North Carolina, 1. Ohio, 2 or 3. Indiana, 1 or 2. Florida, still discussion down there, but that could be another gold mine for them if they tipped it even further their way. Kansas won, New Hampshire won, and Nebraska. Democrats, Utah, California, Maryland. Look at this. If you offset California and Texas, Missouri and Utah, North Carolina and Maryland, everything left over is an advantage to the Republicans. And don't forget, the Supreme Court is considering what could really be the end of the Voting Rights Act, which would protect minority groups. So you don't have a state that's half black, for example, that elects only one congressional member and everybody else goes to the Republicans that would represent that population in some ways. So if that is gutted, Democrats could lose 19 seats. This would be a huge amount. But this is also
it really is.
Let me just break that down, because probably
Please,
people don't really understand what's going on, or they're not paying attention. The Supreme Court's hearing a case in Louisiana right now. Basically, what the case is about is districting. The districts are made up based upon race, because what they're basically saying is the African Americans in the state of Louisiana cannot put together a congressional district. So we're going to district it based upon the color of your skin. And what the United States is arguing right now under the Department of Justice, that is not constitutional. And they are right. And most probably the state of Louisiana is going to lose 6-3 because the three people who vote against everything do not pay attention to the Constitution. They're pure activists. And let me just, for those who disagree with me on that particular position, let me put this out there, and I want you to think about it. Say, for instance, I say if we're going to district based upon the color of skin, we're going to district based upon religion. That there are Catholics in specific states like Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Illinois, Los Angeles, the biggest diocese in the United States. And we are going to give the Catholics who vote a district based upon their religion. What would you say? Of course you would say that's not right, because it isn't right. That's not how the system works, just as it doesn't work based upon race. So that's what it's about, because, of course, the press is not spinning it that way. They're spinning it like it's discrimination, blah, 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 blah. No, you can't have it both ways. If you want equal rights under the law, well, then everyone's vote is the same, and the districts are going to be structured in the same manner. That's the argument. No one understands that because it's not presented in the way that I just presented it, because frankly, the way I just presented it is objective. And that is what's at stake. And they're going to lose, Joe Pasillo.
That's right.
So what's going to happen? He said 19 seats are going to flip. I've seen everywhere between 12 and 20. Say it's 19. Also, something to keep in mind, the census is soon to happen, and they're not going to count people who are non-citizens, i.e. illegals, in the census. That's also going to affect the districting, which means Republicans are going to get more seats. What does that mean? They will never, ever win the House. Ever. And what are they going to do about it? Well, first we have Barack Obama, who's out there, and he knows there's danger. Whenever I've said this on the show, that he pops his head, he's not stupid. He knows there's danger. They're in a lose-lose situation. My prediction, they have nowhere else to go but violence. That's a sad prediction, Joe Pasillo, but they have nowhere else to go, or they lie down and die. It's one of the two things.
Well, first of all, it's what you just said is very rational here at the front line with Joe Pasillo and Joe Rossinello. So wherever you're seeing this, please help us out, like, subscribe, share. What you're saying is rational. We've seen their violence. Okay. And by the way, it doesn't get, we found out recently, the reason why they say right-wing violence is more prevalent than left-wing violence, because when there's left-wing violence, the Department of Justice was not categorizing it as left-wing violence. So when a left-wing nut job shoots up a Catholic church in Minnesota, it doesn't go down as left-wing violence, but that's what it is. But I will offer you another alternative for what the Democrats could do. They have to come back from their realm of insanity that they live in. and understand that the things that they're pushing for are not going to get them into elected office in any major way. They'll win pockets with that, but pockets are not going to be enough to govern this country. What it means is, like you said, either they go violent, as you said, okay, or they lay down and die, which we know they're not going to do, or they're going to moderate their positions. Now, when you look at the fact that a communist is about to get elected mayor, and we'll get into that,
and he is going to be elected.
He's going to be elected mayor of New York City.
No question.
Then you say to yourself, we know then they're going to go for violence, because a communist mayor is going to allow violence. He'll stand down the police. We've seen that with the mayor of Chicago. He will do nothing to stop these kids from killing each other. Nothing. Okay. And then, and he says, to me, he's just an evil, evil man. What's his name? Brandon Johnson, or whatever his name is.
In Chicago.
Anyway, for the mayor of Chicago. So the thing is, I'd like your thoughts on this. What's the shot of Democrats saying, well, we're going to have to back off this agenda and we're going to have to come towards the middle? Dare I say, might even have to work with Donald Trump a little bit if they want to get elected.
They're not there right now. Like, I hear what you're saying. Like, for instance, I've heard a number of people say it, that AOC is the best positioned candidate right now for the voice of the Democratic Party to run in 2028, and she will get demolished. She will win, as you said, pockets throughout the country. She will get demolished across the nation. Demolished. Because America is not buying it as a whole. New York City is not America. Chicago is not America. She will not win, even, to be honest with you, states like Georgia, North Carolina, where you have Atlanta. No way. No way is that going to happen. They refuse to move. The best candidates, if they really were thinking, would be Shapiro and Rahm Emanuel. And they will reject both outright. Shapiro being the governor of Pennsylvania. He's intelligent. I don't agree with him. He's intelligent. Rahm Emanuel understands politics. He's intelligent. He was the mayor of Chicago. The radical stuff isn't going to work. Here's the deal, though. In time, and this is another danger to keep in mind, is Mamdani a foreshadowing of something to come? And this is, I'm putting this out to the Chamber of Commerce Republicans. There is a real issue in America right now with regard to debt, with regard to housing, with regard to inflation. Many people under 40 are very, very, very upset and frankly see their life as hopeless. This is not me making this up. Go back to Charlie Kirk. He has said this. He's gone to college campuses. He's talking to the people. He has said this. So if that population continues to feel that way, and if solutions are not put forth, particularly from the Chamber of Commerce Republicans, who are going to have to give a little bit more, the Republican Party is going to have to almost revert back to what the Democratic Party used to be. A party of the people. Because if you can't provide solutions to that group of people, they can't buy a house. They can't get out from under their debt. The middle class begins to disappear. They will start to listen to people like Mamdani in the future, because desperate people just want basics. I want to eat. I'm not looking for anything more.
Well, we have a clip that we're going to play in a little while at the front line with Joe and Joe, where Josh Hawley is talking to the president of the Teamsters Union, and I'll save the details for a few minutes. We'll get to it in a few minutes, where basically he's saying what you're saying. Why is it that two very similar companies in our economy, all right, one can pay their workers pension, benefits, wage, and be significantly profitable, and another one who's in a similar business doesn't? And this is, like you said, again, I don't want to be a spoiler. I want to talk about it when we get to that. But the thing is, this is like you said, Joe. If the Republicans don't get their head out of their ass and understand that the days of the white shoe, WASP, country club, elitist perception that the American people have of the Republican Party, unless they shed that, which means they're going to have to address the needs of families, like you said, not just eating, but prospering prospering. Even if you're a working guy, you're prospering in America. You own a home. You have mobility because you have a vehicle. You have a good job. You could put food on the table and clothes on your kids' backs and provide for their education and your own retirement, which is what most people want. Okay, most people don't. They have modest aspirations. They say, "Well, I'm a working guy, but I want to eat. I want to thrive in America." And you're right. Unless the Republicans address that, okay, you will get more Mamdanis.
No, there's no question about that. I've talked.
Now they're not going to go out to the suburbs. Real quick, Joe, they're not going to go out to the suburbs because the suburbs are going to reject them. But you will have a communist mayor of every major city in New York.
No, you may even get one as the president. Look what happened to Canada. He's just in a fancy suit. Mark Carney is absolutely a radical leftist. Him and Mamdani will have a great dinner conversation. You can get a man just like that, and he will gut the country within 8 years. He'll gut it. You see, that's where the Republicans, and I've had these conversations with friends of mine at work that live in fancy towns in Long Island. They're very well-to-do. They can't let go of that Chamber of Commerce mentality. They can't get it through their head.
No, they gotta.
I know it. I've said this to them. I'm saying because they're threatening their own survival if they don't. They don't want to go there. I tell them that this all the time. There's an image on the Jesuit crest of two wolves eating out of a bucket. Why is that image significant? Because if the one wolf, it's the image of two people, very different, eating out of the same bucket. If the one wolf does not eat on the other side of the bucket tips, and guess what happens? That wolf attacks you because they don't have anything. That's what's going to happen, and that's why Mamdani is going to get elected. People have to think into it a little bit more. It's not, and frankly, a lot of it has to do with they're not informed, meaning they don't know that socialism is a dead end. It never has worked, and it doesn't work. The state doesn't care about you. If you don't believe me, look at what's going on in Europe right now. Europe is a basket case, a godless governmental body. It's what's it called? The EU does not mention God one bit in its documents. Look at it.
Built by the Catholic Church. Built by the Catholic Church. And the same civilization has said to God, "See ya. We don't want you."
Just to give you some idea, just to give an example, I love to give examples. Portugal is part of the EU. 80% of the tax dollars of the people of Portugal goes to Brussels.
80%.
Doesn't even stay in their country.
Right.
So this is what you work for? Brussels? Get the frig out of here. Get out of here. That's absurd.
No, it is absurd. I want to take the opportunity to welcome John Everett Button. He's in the chat room. John, I believe, is new to the show. John, welcome. Thank you for listening to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Please share our videos if you like our conversations. So thanks for being here, John. God bless you, brother. But yeah, one thing I did want to say before, because we're going to keep the conversation moving about the Democrats. We got a clip from Bernie Sanders we want to discuss. But Joe, did you realize I did not know it was this bad? I forgot what source it was. Do you know what the percentage of Republican voters are in New England collectively?
I heard 40.
40%. Do you know how many congressional seats they have? 0. Yeah, and then this is the thing that bothers me. And the guy from CNN in the clip that we played earlier, what does the headline say? Supreme Court's going to gut the Voting Rights Act. What about the voting rights of those 40 people?
But here's the thing, that's on the agenda.
Oh, it is on the agenda.
And Joe, that's why they're terrified.
You know who said that? Arnold Schwarzenegger, who I'm not a big fan of, said that to Bill Maher. Bill Maher was trying to question him about the Republicans doing the gerrymandering. And Arnold said, the Democrats went as far as they could go, Bill. He goes, but don't sound shocked that gerrymandering goes on. Gerrymandering's been going on for 200 years. He goes, oh, what are you shocked about? The Democrats did it. They ran it all the way to the hilt. That's why New England doesn't have one Republican congressional member. Okay. And he said, well, now the Republicans' turn to do it.
Well, no, but it's not even, dude, I just want equity. Those people have to have a voice. And And they're not.
Can I say one thing radical? Radical. Joe, this is radical. I'm going to be radical with you, okay? How about they look at the map of their state and they draw straight lines? They make boxes. That's what they do. And guess what? If you fall within that box and you don't like your representative, or you vote with your feet. If I don't like what's going on in Essex County, if I live in Essex County in New Jersey, well, guess what? If Bergen County is more conservative or Morris County is more conservative, guess what? I could sell my house in Essex County in New Jersey, and I could go and move in Morris County or Bergen County. Vote with your feet if you want your own district. But how about this for a radical idea? And I'm sorry I cut you off, Joe. Straight lines right across the states. That's it. That's your district. What's wrong with that?
Ultimately, there just has to be some equity. And I like what Arnold had to say. They took it as far as they can go. Joe, they're about to have their day, so to speak, and it's not going to be pretty. It's out there. What's been going on, they haven't even talked about. The Supreme Court isn't even addressing the 40% to 0 representatives in New England. How about in California? Same deal. It's all rigged. Republicans can't get a voice. Right. They can't win. It's impossible. I've heard people from California say that. It's structured that way. Well, guess what? Under Trump, and most probably, particularly if AOC is running against J.D. Vance, she's not going to win, which means you have 8 more years of this, which means you have another head of the DOJ who's looking at this and is going to examine it with a fine-tooth comb. This is what I'm saying. They're in trouble. If they don't move, they're going to basically destroy themselves unless the economy continues to go south. That is the 800-pound gorilla in the room, because historically speaking, parts of the world, particularly I've seen it in India, this also is the case in northern Brazil, people who can't eat lean to the far left because all they do is bribe them with a bag of rice. That's it. And they will vote for communists because all they want is a bag of rice. When you can't eat and someone's going to give you a bag of rice to get a vote, and that's what you're basically looking at, that is the far leftist mentality. That's why they opened the border. It wasn't a humanitarian effort. Anyone who thinks that is, frankly, I don't know what you're thinking. That's all it is. It's nothing more than a bought vote.
Yeah. No, you're right. And yes, I listen, you got 3 things. The Democrats are not going to pull a hat trick here. And there's 3 ways that that just to sum it all up. And then we're going to move on to Bernie Sanders. There's 3 ways to sum it up. You got the Supreme Court, you have Republican redistricting, and you have the census. All of that spells really, really bad news on the horizon for the Democrats. You're with the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. We're way in the breach, usually on Thursday nights, 9:00 Eastern time. I got a little delayed this past week, so that's why we're going on Sunday. So here, let's Joe, as the old saying goes, and the hits just keep on coming.
Democratic leadership is right now way, way, way out of touch with where working families and the majority of the people are. So either they get replaced, either there is a movement that says, thank you for what you've done, you're gone now. We need a new party that represents working people, or else they hang on so tightly that they force the creation of another party, which is not easy in the United States. No, it's easier not in the UK and other countries. But the current leadership of the Democratic Party is, as I mentioned, New York State is a perfect example, where there should be enthusiasm and excitement. There is fear that working class people, that ordinary people are going to get involved and threaten the existence of the leadership here, their power.
Well, I mean, Joe, I'm going to just throw it over to you. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, basically, it sounds like he agrees with us. He's basically saying, like, while cities like New York or Chicago, basically, this idea works. It doesn't work in the rural communities. I've heard this said even in past elections, looking at Chicago specifically. The people on the south side of Chicago, which is predominantly poor and black, do not speak the same language with the people at the University of Chicago, which is in the center of the city and is the elite, affluent, and highly educated, both of which claim to be Democrats. They don't speak the same language. The party has to somehow make that bridge, and they're not. They're simply not. The Democratic Party is so fractured right now. It's, there are voices always in parties, in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. I don't even look at parties anymore. I look at right and wrong and good and evil. It's more good and evil nowadays than right and wrong. But speaking specifically about the Democratic coalition, it is that divide. South side of Chicago versus the University of Chicago. The poor, who predominantly in the inner cities always voted for the Democrat, are now looking at the Republican voice. That's a fact. We saw this in the Trump election. 1 out of 5 African Americans voted for Donald Trump, males. Almost 50% of the Latino vote voted for Donald Trump. Many of those people are in the cities. Why is that? Because the people who came across the border in droves, they came for one reason and one reason only. No one's talking about this. Some are, not enough. They came for votes. That's why they did this. And they're taking the resources of those people. Listen and do some research. It's all over X. People in the South Side of Chicago, in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, telling you, the voter, why they're no longer voting for the Democrat. Right. That's going to continue, Joe Pasillo. And if it does, they're in a lot of trouble. Bernie Sanders knows it.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders knows it. The problem is, though, he's a poor spokesman for like our good friend, female KC Royals fan. Hey, what's happening? Is Bernie's a communist. He doesn't represent working people. Now, part of me thinks that communists are deluded enough to think that we all think that they actually represent working people. And we know that they don't. Communists are interested in one thing, their own power. State power, that's what they want. Bernie Sanders is no different. Bernie Sanders talks about being out of touch with the American people and current Democrat leadership. I want to say, Bernie, the reason why they robbed you during the 2016 Democrat primary and they handed the crown over to Hillary Clinton is because they know you'll never get elected either, Bernie. So they had a better shot with her because maybe she could sound moderate. Bernie, you're a bad spokesperson for somebody who's criticizing your party for being out of touch with the American people. Because guess what? Working class people, Bernie, yes, Joe Arsenault is right. They want food on the table and they want clothes on their back and they want a living wage. But they are not socialists, Bernie. You are.
I agree with a lot of the observations of Bernie Sanders. He makes a lot of keen observations. I don't agree with his solutions, but this is where Bernie Sanders is hypocritical. Bernie Sanders takes money. Bernie Sanders makes himself sound like, I'm taking $5 donations from the factory workers in the middle of Oklahoma. Wrong, Bernie. You are getting money too, because there's the only way you can campaign in America. It's the only way. He talks about it too, as if he doesn't do it. He does it. He gets money too, is the way that our campaign financing structure works. It does not work for the regular man's voice. It disenfranchises the regular man. We are an aristocracy that governs a nation in disguise as a constitutional republic that also votes. That is exactly what we are, based upon how campaigns are structured from a financial perspective. That has to change, and it never will, because that would require a revolution beyond comprehension, because powerful people don't give up power. But at least people should understand that. That is what we have. That is reality.
Well, listen, we started the conversation talking about redistricting and Democrats losing. I'm not saying, listen, Republicans don't walk on water. In fact, far from it. All right. We both know that, and we've been very critical of the party we ostensibly vote for. Okay. I can't vote Democrat in my conscience. I've never, in my lifetime, there are very few people who I looked at in the Democrat Party and said, well, I could vote for that guy. All right. Maybe Clinton. But he was just too much of a silver-tongued devil. Just never trusted that guy. But the thing is, they are going to get, as we said earlier, they are going to get, or should get, trounced, because again, they're not going to pull a hat trick. They're not going to win at the Supreme Court, stop the Republicans from redistricting, and Donald Trump doing the census and not counting non-Americans, non-Americans. They're not going to pull that hat trick. I doubt they're going to get even one of those things. In which case, Joe, Steve Bannon said that they could lose as many as 40 seats.
No, that's what I'm saying. That is a real conversation. I believe Barack Obama, when they say, again, we have to do some translating because they never tell you what's the real deal. That's why you're watching our show, by the way. When he says it's a threat to democracy. No, it's a threat to you. Right. It has nothing to do with democracy. Actually, what we're trying to do is bring a little bit more of equity to the conversation. We're trying to give some more voices, i.e. to the people of New England, where 40% of them don't agree with you and they have no representation.
It's undisputable.
But this is my point. When he says it's a threat to democracy, what do you mean by that, Mr. Obama? Explain yourself.
So the Irish Catholic who lives up in the suburbs of Boston has no representation
for
President
decades.
Obama, for decades. So when you talk about a threat to democracy, I would say this: do you want to take any measures? Because you're such a champion of democracy, as you tell us, President Obama, you're a champion of democracy. Are you going to be in favor of any measures that are going to give those 40% of Republicans in New England? You know what to say? Well, Democrat process has to work. Elections have consequences. Exactly.
Yes, they do,
yes,
sir.
They do.
Now you're about to see them. And
you're about to see it on the other side.
He comes out at these points in time. They know they're in trouble. I'm telling you. This is reality. This is why when Donald Trump was running, they went to the degree that they went to not have him become the president, because they knew they're not dumb. These are intelligent people. They see much deeper into the situation than the average person on the street. They knew what was to come. They knew it, and it scared the heck out of them, and they are scared right now. But again, that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of fixing America's problems. We're just breaking down the political situation right now. America's problems run so much deeper than just districting. Ultimately, you talked about earlier, Joe, like the answer, the solution. Donald Trump isn't the solution. Our country's sick. It's sick. The people, we're a sick nation. Things that, frankly, should never go on are now such commonplace. Murder, school shootings, like mutilating children without telling like their parents they want to transition, third trimester abortion. What are you, crazy? This is like, in some places, not even thought to be like a problem. We're a sick nation. And until we address that, and many people are saying this too, unless there's a religious revival, unless God is put on top once again, there will be no lasting change. None whatsoever. It's just a bunch of sick people. That's what it is, arguing.
We see, this is my problem with Republicans, is because they it's like, soon as you mention God, soon as you mention the natural law, soon as you mention the 10 Commandments, soon as you mention there should be guardrails on our behavior, that freedom and license are not the same thing. Okay, you mentioned abortion. You can't kill babies in the womb. It's that simple. If you can't get that through your head, what makes you think that an economy that goes to $50 trillion is going to do us any better than, or bring us to a better state than we're now, when we can't even recognize the value of human life? Then the thing is, too, talking about the Democrats and what direction they're going. Okay, we know that they're godless completely. Okay, they've shown that time and again. They didn't even want to say a prayer for Charlie Kirk on the House of the United States Congress, okay, which is disgusting.
Despicable.
These people are disgusting. Michelle Obama said, they go high, or they go low, we go high. I said, you've been low, woman. You've been in the gutter. You and your entire evil, disgusting party, including your husband, you're never high. Or maybe you are sometimes, but you're always low, okay? And when you see things like that, here, you want to know why the Democrat Party, Joe, is going to suffer huge losses in the midterms? And I don't care, because this is the type of person that they have as a major figure in their party.
It's done.
A packed room at the St. Paul Armory erupted after the governor's signature made driver's license for all the law of the land.
So we give driver's licenses to anyone here. You don't have to be a citizen. You don't have to, which is a photo ID. So if someone comes in, they register, they have the driver's license, but they have an incorrect social or no social or whatever. So then they become incomplete. But if they walk in to vote with their driver's license, does that make them all of a sudden now okay?
Mr. Linnell.
Madam Chair, so the designation on the roster for someone whose registration had been incomplete, if they present the election judge with that acceptable identification document, that would clear the challenge from the roster and they would be permitted to cast a ballot.
Mr. Anderson.
Well, okay, there's your problem potentially. So thank you.
So just to clarify, someone who is not a citizen but presents a driver's license at that point in the process could be permitted to vote.
Madam Chair, at the time of registration, as well as at the time of submitting a ballot, every voter is signing the attestation affirming their eligibility to vote, including that they meet all eligibility requirements, that they are a U.S. citizen.
So what? You signed something. You clearly aren't.
Right.
This is, at least Minnesota is being forthright in what this plan was all about. That's where I give them some credit. At least they're not disguising it, because that was what it was about, the open border. It was not about humanitarian reasons why we're giving people a chance. And frankly, what took place on the border, the rapes, the child trafficking, no one talked about. No one. No one, not
Right.
even the Catholic Church. I didn't hear a peep. No one.
Very
It was
upsetting.
disgraceful what
Very
took place.
upsetting.
And I am all for giving people a chance. I am all for immigration, and I am not for merit-based immigration. But it's also in the catechism of the Catholic Church that the borders are legitimate in a country. Borders are legitimate, and there has to be prudence. There was no prudence. This mass group of people, human beings, yes, many of them Catholic, yes, who came into America, lowered the wage of the working man in America, made prices of rents get driven sky high in low-income areas. Where is anyone talking about that? Do you want some of these people in here? Of course, give people a chance. I'm all about it. Was there any thinking involved? Was there any plan? Was there anything involved other than what that woman just brought out? It was a power play. Be damned the working poor in America. And that is exactly what it was. And at least Minnesota is being transparent about it. I have had it with the virtue signaling of all these people, as if they cared about these people. You don't care about them. What are you doing other than getting their vote, and they're giving you power so you could, frankly, so America could slaughter children in the womb? That is exactly what that is about.
Yo, that's really what it comes down to. I mean, it's like, again, it's you said it right, the virtue signaling. It's constantly like Trump's a racist. If you support him, you're a racist because you don't want people to come across the border. Joe, I'm sorry. I would never do this, but this is what makes me want to slap somebody in the teeth. It's like, because I don't like to be called names, especially since I know that I know that I know you're lying about me, but you got to call me a racist because of my position, let's say, on when it comes to the border. And how about equity? You used the word equity a few times in our conversation here tonight at the front line with Joe and Joe in regards to, let's say, districting and all that. Well, what about the equity or justice that my mother deserves? Okay, that my mother came here and had to take a test, had to learn English, had to get a driver's license. Okay, she was not automatically registered to vote. She had to do all these things. Okay, she did not become a citizen until after my brother and I were born in 1966 and 1967. Where's the fairness to my mother? Why does somebody get to come in here and just walk in and Tim Walz is going to give him a driver's license? Where's my mother's effing apology, Governor Walz? Because you owe my mother and millions of Irish, German, Italian, so many people, immigrants that came to this country. You owe them all an apology. And the other thing is this, it's not just an apology. You need to do something to get these people now out of this country and have them come in the right way. and have controlled immigration into this country. As you said, I'm not for merit-based immigration either, because then that's all you're getting is doctors and lawyers. We have enough doctors and lawyers. You know what? You want to know what my litmus test is? You want to be an American, and all that means. You want to do things right. You want to.
Many of these people do. In
right,
fairness,
many people don't do. I
they're-
agree with you.
and I can't fault them. They're just pawns. They're being used. It's like what's going on in the Ukraine. The Ukraine in the last 100 years, this is round number 2. First, the Russians just starved them to death. The kulaks got starved to death by Stalin. And now we're destroying them again because NATO wants to move its borders east. Disgusting. That is what's been going on. It's disgusting. These poor people are just being used for political power. And no one says a word. No one says a word.
Right. Hey, well, I'll tell you what, though. I mean, it's not here. It's not only here. But I'm glad you sent this clip because I want to play it because it really hurts me. In my heart and in my soul, what's happening in Ireland is really, it really bothers me in my soul. Take a listen.
The anti-Irish agenda that is taking place in Ireland is a shame, and it is rumbling towards an earthquake with the general public of Ireland. And I raised awareness. I went as far as I could go at this present time. But Ireland, under its political cartel, is not a place for new voices. And it is an undemocratic process that is taking place. And it's an absolute shame, a travesty. Nothing to do with Rosie O'Donnell. I don't know Rosie. She's a comedian and whatnot. I believe she's in Ireland. She's been on a few talk shows. I have no issue with Rosie. I am for my country. I'm a God-fearing patriot. And may God-fearing patriotism win in this fight against evil. And that is what it is. There's so much travesty taking place in Ireland that screams me to sleep at night.
So obviously, I mean, again, the reason why I'm glad you sent that clip is because the same thing is happening. They don't have the people
There's
aren't
no
represented
democracy.
in Ireland.
That's a joke. Just so people know, he had to drop out. And by the way, last I heard, he had an approval rating of 60%. He was going.
Why did he have to drop out?
Basically, because he was going to win. That's what they made him drop out. He's basically saying, I was going to run for president, and the powers that be, the structure, basically wouldn't permit it. So they made him drop out. And that is because he was going to win.
Right.
And this is the ruse that's been going on. They tried to do it in America with Trump. They just didn't succeed by the grace of God. How that didn't happen, I don't even know. They put a bullet that hit him in the ear. If that wasn't like the hand of God, I don't know what was. These are not democracies, people. That is a perfect example of it. You actually think the UK is a democracy? You actually think what's going on in France is a democracy, or in Germany? They're so tightly under the boot of the globalist regime that is the EU, that it's absurd, and they need to be called out. And frankly, America, and it's starting, the conversation is starting. We have to distance ourselves from these nations. We have nothing in common with you anymore. I said this on the last show, and I'll say it again. If you're not for the regular man, the voice of the people, a democracy, you are nothing more than a dictatorship. That is tyranny, and that is not what this country is about. Goodbye, sir. We will find other allies. I am not interested in what you're selling or pushing. Have a good day. That is absolutely absurd. And that's what's going on. That's real. And you should look, people, I'm telling you right now, start doing some research, because that's what's spreading. Democracy is dying across the globe.
No, it's absolutely true. And again, that's why, we show the clips. It's all out there. The media, the good thing in all of this, Joe, over the last 10 or 15 years with all this nonsense is that the media and the power that they have has waned so much and that's why they obviously try to stop Elon Musk. That's why Zuckerberg is now a bad guy because he loosened the restrictions on Facebook. So you actually could talk about things like rigged elections and vaccines or vaccine BS and all that stuff. That's why they hate all this, because they can't fight this. They're trying to. They'd love to. The same way they're trying to fight Bitcoin, because they don't have control over Bitcoin. They don't have control over social media. They will get so much pushback. Because remember, if you can control what I say, well, then what about the leftist who's on X or Facebook and says something, and Facebook drops the hammer on them? They don't want that either, right? They have no choice but to let this be a free market, a true free marketplace of ideas. And to me, that's a very encouraging thing, because E. Michael Jones has said this a number of times, and many others have said it's an obvious statement, but thank God, and I'm paraphrasing, thank God for the ability. He goes, I can hit a button and I could go live with my brother-in-law who's in New Jersey and I'm in Arizona, and we could talk about these things, and people are out there, like our good friends are in the chat room. People are out there actually watching and listening. And we're not raising anybody's consciousness. We're raising our own consciousness as a community by just simply talking about these things. That's what we need to get back to. But remember, we're talking about the left. They don't want to talk about things because the crap that comes out of their mouths, people just say, dude, are you smoking crack? Like boys could be girls and girls could be boys, and a 2-year-old girl can identify as a boy, and we're not supposed to take that child away from the mother who encourages that kind of behavior. Democrats talk like that, Joe, and it turns people off because obviously what they're saying is insane. So that's why they don't want conversation. They don't want Joe and Joe to talk, from the smallest podcast to the biggest podcast. They don't want anybody to talk. They don't control the narrative anymore. They try. Joe, you tell me, even CNN.
Well, how
many conservatives are on CNN
for a long time? For years and years. I mean, I could recall a friend of mine through some different Catholic organizations I belong to. They're originally from the Bronx. Now they live, ironically enough, in Mississippi. He's a truck mechanic. And I was talking to his wife. She runs a 501c, what's it called? Pro-life organization in Jackson, Mississippi. And she's like, Joe, I became, her exact word, she's an intelligent woman. She's like, and this is why I bring this up. This is an intelligent woman. I became politically aware during COVID. Many people have. So have I. I actually believed the system was legit. It's not legit. I've seen too much in the last 10 years. I've seen too much, too many contradictions. Like Donald Trump or not, what happened to Donald Trump should scare everyone, because it was so fundamentally totalitarian. It was horrifying. And frankly, let's not even talk about what went on with COVID, how they shut a whole entire economy down simply for one reason and one reason only: to prevent Donald Trump from being the president of the United States. And it worked. That should terrify you, whether you like Donald Trump or not.
Right.
I will never, you talk to old people, older folks who went through the Depression, the Great Depression, many of them are gone. There's only a few left. They'll say, I'll never trust the banking system again. I will never trust this country again because of what I have seen since 2016 with my own eyes, ever. I don't know if I ever can unsee what I saw in the last 9 years. It was horrendous. Yeah. And it really goes to show you who is in control and who doesn't have power. And guess who that is? You and me. If we have no power, nothing, and in a minute, they could turn on us in a second. Right. That terrify people. It terrifies me because I have children.
Right. And the thing is, and even more so than when people tried to talk about it, they shut them down. They wouldn't even let people have comment. You couldn't even mention COVID on YouTube, on Facebook. You get flagged right away. Don't you dare mention vaccines. Don't use the word ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. Don't do it. Again, it's
They let people die.
E. Michael Jones calls it the cunning of reason. I think he's using a phrase from Hegel. Okay, basically, cunning of reason is kind of like unintended consequences or God's providence. They won the left won the COVID battle, and they won in 2020. Technically, Joe Biden got installed because of a rigged election. They shut the economy down and had the greatest transfer of wealth, as you always like to point out on the show, in the history of humanity, the greatest transfer of wealth from working people to the wealthy, to the elites, okay? But here's the law of unintended consequences, or the cunning of reason, or God's providence, however you want to describe it. That was the worst thing that could happen for them, because they had a boob. And that's what my father would have called Joe Biden. I know that because he called Biden a boob when my father was alive. He says, my father would always sit there and go, oh, look at his boob. So they installed a boob as president. All right. So that wrecked them, who did nothing but accept Barack Obama's bidding. That wrecked them. All right. And they gave Donald Trump a chance to regroup. And what you have now, because Elon Musk came around, okay, you have a free market of ideas, ostensibly on Facebook, mostly Facebook, Rumble, X, YouTube is a little slow in coming, but I think even Google relaxed their restrictions. They've lost that battle as far as the media is concerned, right? After having thought that they won all these battles, they lost that battle, and Donald Trump had the greatest political comeback in the history of the country, maybe in the history of the world. Okay, that's how unlikely him becoming president in 2024 was, and so it's very heartening, because they think they have the power to push that button again. The only problem is this time they're not going to be able to shut everybody up, and they're not going to be able to lock everybody in their homes. And moreover, and I think it's also very encouraging, and they know that. But here's the thing: we have, unfortunately, you and I say you and I because, let's face it, we tend to vote Republican, okay? Because the Democrats, we have to vote for somebody, and the Democrats, as we like to say at the front line with Joe and Joe, are completely insane. But unless people start listening to guys like the head of the Teamsters Union and senators like Josh Hawley and others who genuinely, along with Donald Trump, who I honestly believe truly cares about working people and our lives and our prosperity and our thriving in this country, until the Republicans start listening, all your wins are going to be short-lived. Let's listen to this clip.
And meanwhile, these guys are fighting you, Mr. O'Brien, every step of the way as you try to get some basic representation for their workers, for their drivers. Tell us about what you've been facing from this company.
I'll get this right at one point. Amazon is probably the largest violator of the NLRA right now. And they have grown significantly, to your point. They focus on 150% turnover ratio in their workforce. They focus on distressed communities. And the number one violator of OSHA, they've got the most violations last time we checked. Now, we have a model that's a similar company that employs similar workforce at United Parcel Service, 340,000 Teamsters that are part-time and full-time. Those part-timers earn full-time benefits, health and welfare and pension. They earn wage increases guaranteed every year. They earn a livable wage. And most importantly, they have a path to a full-time career that, on the average, the UPS full-time employee makes about $140,000 per year for doing the same business. And UPS is a very profitable business.
Boy, you talk about $140,000 in change. You talk about that versus $37,000. I'm just thinking back to your reference to rerum novarum, the dignity of the individual. I mean, how are you supposed to raise a family on $37,000? The difference between that and what you've been able to secure at UPS is incredible. Let me just ask you this. Amazon is also one of the biggest offenders when it comes to not negotiating with workers who've decided to unionize. You mentioned Staten Island. I think they're still waiting for a first.
Yeah, Staten Island was.
Do you know how powerful that exchange was? That when you sent me...
Tell people who Josh Hawley is. Many people may not know.
Senator from Missouri, okay?
Conservative, Republican, having that conversation.
Having that conversation, bringing in rerum novarum. They've probably been watching the front line with Joe and Joe. How many times have we mentioned
Tell people
other
what
words,
that is. They probably don't know.
Rerum Novarum was a document that was the beginning of what we call the Catholic, the social compendium of the Catholic Church, basically social doctrine, mostly in areas of economics, the relationship between capital and labor. It was written by Pope Leo XIII in 1891. It was expounded upon 40 years later by Pope Pius XI, and then back in 1991, Pope St. John Paul II on the 100th year anniversary. And what it does, it basically says this, in a nutshell, without any religious language, all right, is just basically there are rights, duties, and obligations on all parties involved, whether it's labor, whether it's capital. It was a document that condemned communism, okay, because it was a new thing, and that's what Rerum Novarum means, new things. Communism was a new thing, but then it was also equally critical of rabid capitalism and consumerism, because both are materialist worldviews that don't leave any room for the transcendent. Again, I don't want to get all muddled, but Rerum Novarum laid out the Catholic foundation, which is neither rabid capitalist. It is free market and respects free markets, okay, but is not in favor of rabid capitalism or state ownership of the means of production and communism. So that's what we're. So to hear the document itself brought up in an exchange between the Teamsters president and Senator Josh Hawley in the United States Senate, I was like, Lord, thank you, because that's if the Republicans want the winning playbook. Let me put the finer point on the economy. Jeff Bezos and Amazon need to have their feet held to the fire, and let that be an example to all the other companies out there. What did he say? I'm going to throw it over to you. What did he say? What does Amazon do? They go into places where $37,000 is all the money in the world. That's where they go. They're not interested in being in places where guys like you are, where you say, well, dude, listen, you got to pay us $50, $60 an hour. You want me to break my ass on a loading dock? And by the way, my hand's raised. I used to be a member of Teamsters Local 560 a long time ago in another life. I've loaded my share of trucks. That is hard work. And Amazon, Bezos, because they want their market cap to stay at a couple of $1 trillion, they get away with paying somebody $37,000 a year. If the Republicans want the best playbook for how they're supposed to craft their policies, they ought to collectively go and have a symposium of some kind, okay, and have somebody teach them about the principles outlined in Rerum Novarum. I promise you this, if they did that, every blue-collar Democrat in this country will vote Republican.
I've thought about this, and the reason why they won't is because that will lower the S&P, which just hit 45,000. And they don't. The Dow, I'm sorry. That is why they don't. That, if you ask me, is a metric that every time it hits a record high, the lower half of America gets nothing. It's at the expense. The only reason why the people, as in the people who control the levels of power, don't speak out against Amazon is because that will affect their stock price. Because if they have to pay people, Walmart doesn't pay a union wage either, by the way.
Right.
If they have to pay people a proper salary to live, the stock price goes down, and that lowers the Dow. And in doing that, that affects the richest of the rich in America. And that's what it's all about. That is why they took away pensions from companies. I can go on and price, like on and profit sharing and all of it. It's basically run up the Dow and driven down the rest of America. And that's where the Republicans, including the elite Democrats who pretend like they care about others, they live in the same neighborhoods as the Chamber of Commerce Republicans. Their kids go to the same schools, and they all belong to the same country club.
Right.
But getting back to that conversation, an amazing duo that, say, 30 years ago would never have happened. How those two men are seeing eye to eye. How the head of the Teamsters spoke at the Republican convention was something unfounded.
Right.
that should tell people where the average man is and where the political direction is going of the average man. The Democrats don't care about it as it stands under the leadership of the AOCs.
Do you want me to back up what you just said? I'm going to back up what you just said, okay? The president of Teamsters, okay? What's his name? Sean
O'Malley or something like that.
O'Malley. I think he was in an interview with Tucker or somebody big. And he said Kamala Harris went to address the Teamsters. She gave whatever it was. She gave a speech. She agreed to only answer 3 questions, only 3, from a room full of Teamsters. I'm only going to answer 3 questions. And on the way out, she looked at Sean O'Malley and she said, and this was what he told. Like I said, I think it was Tucker. She said, "I'm going to win with or without you." How do the Republicans not see the handwriting? You could have power for the next 5 centuries if America lasts that long. If you seize on this opportunity to understand working people are tired of getting their face kicked in. And you guys need to be the ones on the political end that are, yes, Joe, I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm going to put on my stockbroker cap. I know a couple of 2-3 things about the market, okay? And I know this. If every company had to adjust their model. You see what Sean O'Malley said? A livable wage, not minimum wage. Minimum wage is just a political tool. Talk about a livable wage. You have to make an adjustment. You have to provide health benefits, and you have to provide an opportunity for a pension. So when a person retires, they'll get Social Security and they'll get their pension, okay? And they can live instead of being out in the street or eating cat food, okay? If they did that, first of all, you're going to have a thriving middle class, which, of course, the elites don't want. They don't want a thriving, robust middle class in this country. We know that. And yes, the Dow, NASDAQ, and S&P are all going to take a hit. But I know enough. I know this also about the stock market. It would take a hit, okay? The Dow would go from 40,000 probably down to 30,000. Probably shave off about 20 to 25% of its value. You know what happens after that, Joe? Everybody gets used to the new situation and the reality of the situation. Workers are making more money, which means they're spending more money. The economy is growing, and all those securities are going to come back. It happened after the Depression. It happened after the financial crisis. It happened time and again. You get the shock to the market sells off. It happened this year when Trump announced the tariffs. The NASDAQ went down 4,000 points. It went down 20%. Okay. What happened after that? Well, the NASDAQ's back at 23,000. The year's not even over yet. So that was in April. It will regroup. You're right. They don't want that. Okay. Because of their
they could care less.
But the bottom line is they know over time those stocks are coming back. What they don't want to do, and then I'm going to hand it over to you, and this is always the problem. What they don't want to do is they don't want to share any of their wealth. They don't.
No, that's a fact. And that's where I laugh when elite Democrats pretend. It cracks me up. Even Bernie Sanders, he's wealthy. He owns 3 properties. Most people don't own 1. And Sean Marie, thank you for correcting me.
Yeah, Sean O'Brien.
Sean O'Brien. It's not a Sean O'Malley, the head of the Teamsters. That's in the chat. Anyway, that is laughable when we hear those voices out there. Even Barack Obama. These voices, we're here for the little man. Yeah, whatever. You own a mansion on Martha's Vineyard that's $40 million. Where'd you get that money, Barack? You own another mansion in D.C. that's worth 12, and you're building 2 homes in Hawaii. Where'd you get that money?
Right.
You're for the little man? What are you talking about? Who believes that? And he's not the only one. Joe Biden's the same way. And there's a ton of Republicans. Lindsey Graham. Where do you get that money, Lindsey?
Right.
The other guy from Kentucky, who's basically completely
McConnell.
Another one, multimillionaire. Where'd you get that money? You're for the little man,
right?
It's laughable. That is the winning model. But I'll be honest with you. The question comes down to it. Will the Republicans see it? And I'll be honest with you. I don't have confidence in them. I actually think, to be truthful with you, Joe, the Mandanis of the world are coming. We should hear the footsteps. What's happening in New York is a foreshadowing of what will happen in America if this continues. That conversation that we just put out there between Josh Hawley, who's arguably one of the most conservative senators in the United States of America, with the head of the Teamsters, Irish Catholic from Massachusetts, no less. That conversation has to grow. If it does grow, the middle class will grow. And if the middle class grows, America thrives again. If not, the end result is President Mondani.
I wouldn't be shocked. We got one more quick clip for you. And this really says a lot.
In 1943, the following directive was issued from party headquarters to all communists in the United States. It read, "When certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them after suitable buildups as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic, and use the prestige of anti-fascist and tolerance organizations to discredit them. In the public mind, constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind."
So here's the thing, is that we know that they've done that. They've been doing that since we were kids. When Ronald Reagan...
They're doing it now.
Well, no, I'm saying...
the word fascist around now. You don't even know what it means.
No, if you asked any of these people to define fascist, they're just going, "Oh, he's a dictator." Okay, that's not the definition. You don't even know what fascist is. If you knew what fascist was, you'd realize that you people are actually the ones who
that is the irony of it all.
Right. So the thing is, but that's what they've done. I will say this, my comment on that is, it's like calling someone racist. It's like calling someone anti-Semitic, calling someone a Nazi or a fascist. All of those labels that they throw at people, whether it be us or our audience members or politicians, whoever the case might be, inconvenient people for the elites, they don't pack a punch anymore. Nobody really cares if you call them racist anymore. Nobody really cares if
Which is a shame, because that's a horrible thing. Which is a shame.
It is a horrible thing. And let me tell you something. They're going to be answerable to God for knowingly calling people racist who they knew were not racist, for calling situations racist that they knew had nothing to do with race. George Floyd dying had nothing to do with race, had nothing to do with the color of his skin. Okay, nothing whatsoever. So many things that happen in this country have nothing whatsoever to do with race. And the people that are involved in it are not racists. Okay, people who criticize American foreign policy towards Israel, or Israel basically raping Gaza and wrecking that place. Okay, criticism of those actions is not anti-Jew or anti-Semitic. Okay, it might be anti-Zionist, but anti-Zionist that's a completely...
That doesn't mean that's more of a political movement. That's not anti-Jew.
I'm anti-Zionist. I'm anti-Zionist.
And to be honest with you, even if you are against basically their political ideology, by the way, the majority of the Israelis are against Netanyahu. He has 30% approval rating. They agree with many of these dissident voices. That is more propaganda.
Yeah.
That you're anti-Semitic. More propaganda that people buy into. It's about power, nothing more.
Well, right, and that's what they do. I mean, the directives that gentleman was reading, I guess that goes back to the 1950s. That came from the Communist Party, the CPUSA, the Communist Party in the Soviet Union. They had a whole plan for how to deal, because look, it's like everything else that they do. They know that what they sell is a lot of BS. They know that people eventually are going to be tuned into that to say, you're full of BS. What did Stalin do? In America, you call him Nazi and fascist. Stalin would just take you, throw you in the gulag, and then you're dead. Go read One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, and you can read anything by Solzhenitsyn, and you'll read all about it. What that brutal, evil regime did. So, but my larger point, it's not working anymore. You call me an anti-Semite, what do you want me to tell you? Knock yourself out. All right. My cousin who's Jewish, my two cousins who are Jewish, they're not calling me an anti-Semite. They're the only two Jewish people I care about. If you want to look at what people call me, the names they call me, you and I are both married to black women. Okay. In other words, you're going to call me a racist? Knock yourself out. Don't call me a racist in front of my wife, because she might slap you in the teeth. if you want the truth. So my point is, all of these things don't matter anymore. You and I, we're fascist, right? According to them, we're fascist, we're racist, we're all these things because we're Catholic and we have white skin. So we must be, because we speak out against Barack Obama and call him
all
a
that
fake
is gaslighting, Joe. It's to get off the topic. They don't have an argument. That's why they killed Charlie Kirk. They don't have an argument. The argument has been lost. When you can't argue, that's what you do. You call names, you ridicule. That's all it is. And they've proven that out time and time again. Get off the subject.
Right.
Label. Frankly, in an argument, in a fair discussion, they cannot carry water against any of these conversations, not for a second. And that's why people have to be informed. That's why people have to turn off the mainstream media. That's why you have to do your own research. That's why you have to listen to alternate sources, not people who are stuck in conspiracy crazy land that are looking for Martians that are going to come down. Not crazy people, real people, intelligent people. The voices are out there. Tune them in.
That's what I say. A great exchange to show you how they're losing was what's her name? Ayala Presley, the bald black chick who's in the member of the house.
She looks like a crazy person, dude. I've seen her, dude. That's a crazy look right there.
She doesn't just look like a crazy person.
That's a crazy look.
Like a crazy person. But she said one of the Republicans, I forgot if it was what's his name, Clay Higgins. I think that's his name, from Louisiana. Talks like this. He's got the real Southern. He's a smart guy, right? But he's like a lawyer, and he said something about Martin Luther King Jr. and she tried to pull that crap on him. Don't you dare mention the name Martin Luther King Jr. should not come out of your mouth. All right, and then I yield back the rest of my time. So then they go back to Clay Higgins. Well, that's a good thing about America is that I get to say whatever the hell I want, and I'll mention whoever I want, and I'll talk about whoever I want. So that's all I got to say about that. It doesn't work anymore.
Martin Luther King would not agree with the DEI movement right now. That's a fact. He would be outright rejected. The Democratic Party right now would not be for Bill Clinton, and the Democratic Party would not be for Barack Obama on the original platform that he ran on. That is an absolute fact. Any person that disputes that is not objective and is not paying attention. That is a fact.
Can you imagine going so far to the left that you're to the left of Barack Obama? Think about that. Anyway, thanks, everybody, for joining us at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. Great conversation as always. It just kind of gets my blood flowing, which is always awesome. So wherever you're seeing this, Gladys, how are you? John, a bunch of our friends are here. Zenny is in the chat room, and a whole bunch of others. So we want to thank you for joining us and supporting us, as you always do. Wherever you're watching this video, Facebook, YouTube, X, help us out. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, tell your friends, tell your families. Hey, did you ever hear these two crazy Italian guys from New Jersey? No, it's Joe and Joe. Those guys are great. We need to get them a bigger audience, and God willing, and we mean that, Joe, and I mean that sincerely. We will get to a wider audience, and we are in this fight nonetheless. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. We hope you keep doing what you're doing. Don't let them beat you. Don't let them discourage you. Don't let them depress you, mainly because we have God. And let's be clear about that. That's the most important. He is the most important thing to have. And if you have him, then a lot of this stuff takes care of itself. So we want to say God bless you to all of you. Watch our interviews, our Veritas Catholic Radio Network interviews. We post all over social media. We have a lot of great guests. Jason Jones, go watch the one with Jason Jones.
Very good.
Yeah, we did very good. He breaks a lot of things down about Gaza, Israel, his own story about how he went from atheist to pro-life Catholic. It's a great interview. We encourage you all to go and watch the interview with Jason Jones. But in the meantime, as I said, God bless you all. We'll see you probably this week, Thursday night, 9:00 Eastern time. And remember, until then, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.